Tech Plus. Now, think about this for a second. I'm not saying that the reason why Jasmy pumped was because of this. No, not at all. If anything, it's because some of the recent news in regards to like certain laws passing in Japan, and we talked about that yesterday. I don't want to get into that again, but look into it, right? Hara posted, Web3 technology is, quote, a catalyst for local development, tokenizing local products and culture. Now, I want to state this. I've been talking about this for, good God, I mean, at least a year that I know of, because we talked about the pairings of what? Local, Japanese yen denominated stablecoins. Maybe you guys get tired of me talking about that. I don't know. I don't see why you would. But this solidifies all that. Okay. And if anything, to have a magazine interview this gentleman, as we know, that's part of the whole Jasmy team, right? The management team, I think is a big deal. So I decided to click on the link. It does interpret it from Japanese to English. Some of it's kind of lost in translation. Excuse me. But it's worth pointing out. So I wanted to get into this whole thing, and if anything, I'm gonna pull this up. Okay. Basically, here it is, and it's from a site. If you guys want to go to, it's called news.mynavi.jp, like my Navy, but instead of Navy with a Y, Navy with an I. It's this part right here. It says basically in regards to achieving traceability using blockchain. Now, there's another company that's currently kind of doing this, right? Or are they not? Hedera. This is Jasmy we're talking about. So, again, understand different areas of the world, but it's worth pointing out. Now, there's more to it on this particular site, and I didn't want to make it a super deep dive. I just want to get to some key things. But what I decided to bring to you guys tonight, as far as significance, is this part where it says from, this publication, is where it says achieving traceability using blockchain, and it talks about data falsification. What is that? Well, it's a threat, like it says, when communicating on the web. Especially back in the 2010s, many counterfeit semiconductor devices were on the market. Why am I pointing this out? The big news that dropped yesterday, again, watch the previous Jasmy video. If you don't want to watch the whole deep dive, you can go towards the end, and I outline about this whole thing, about this whole, big news about the semiconductors and so on. So counterfeit semiconductors were on the market. There's probably still a lot as we speak, but it says a measure to reduce the outflow of counterfeit semiconductor products to the market. The Japan Region of Industry Organization, which is called SEMI, SEMI, is leading the way by standardizing traceability using blockchain. Now, think about this for a second. I always talk about standards, and especially when it comes to ISO TC 307, the quant network standards. And no, I'm not doing a quant Jasmy duo again tonight. That's not it. But again, standards are significant because you realize, just like anything, like a mattress, there's a standard for a mattress, there's standard for tables, there's standards for everything, cars, you name it, right? Everything has some kind of form of a standard. But the whole thing of standardizing traceability using blockchain is a big deal. And when you get into this part where it says hashing the block containing the transaction history using blockchain tech and writing hash value to the next block, the transaction history is connected to traceability and how that becomes basically possible. Again, this has an interview with, a member of the Jasmy management team. But it says it's a big advantage that the entire process from manufacturing to sales channels is borderless. And I like this statement. Local industries prevent illegal leakage of sake. Sake. Some of you guys, I don't know if you ever drank sake before. It's not all that bad. Some people do sake bombers, right? I'm not much of a drinker anymore myself, right? But, once in a while, I wouldn't mind having something like that. But it's a big thing, obviously, in Japan. But like it says, the label itself is electrical. And when the package is open, the electrical wires break, indicating that the package has been opened. Not only will you know which brewery made the sake, but you will also receive proof of the opening. There is no need to worry about replacing the contents. And have the whole thing, tied into blockchain DLT and so on, is a big deal. I've covered this whole thing about NCCC, and I don't want to get into another thing about this, but I decided to get in just like a brief thing about this once again. And it's this statement: blockchain traceability expected to be applied to carbon credits, which have been attracting attention in recent years. Carbon credits issued as credits, emission rights for the reduction effect, right? Some of you guys don't like, me talking about this, but let's face it, Jasmy's got a big thing part of this, especially with the Rice Crop Consortium, the NCCC. But this reference about financial inclusion, or the whole thing of the digitalization or securitization of assets, references everything that we've been talking about for over a year. And I think this is crucial to understand this. And then again, get more to the point here. It's an outline. This is a big article and there's a lot to read, but it says up until now, companies and wealthy individuals have been the main users when it comes to the securitization of assets. But issuance aimed at small-scale investments by individuals by expanding Mitsui & Co. Digital Asset Management and Sony Bank, think about that, have started selling security tokens, digital securities, in small amounts of 100,000 yen. Now, again, that's convenient because you got to keep in mind it's the connections to Jasmy, right? When we made a big deal about who holds all these assets, that's connected to Jasmy, and we were like, well, there's Sony Bank, obviously, former Sony executives, Mitsui & Co. You had other examples that we talked about. What was the other one from a while back? Mitsubishi UFJ Trust, banking. But again, everything that's labeled here is a confirmation of what we talked about for over a year now. And when you get more down to the nitty gritty, it talks about currently there's this whole thing of being able to use existing accommodation facilities, such as hotels. We talked about that on the last show. It talks about in the future there will be likely more facilities, but it's these systems and having IoT tied into these systems and tracking data, so on and so forth. Again, this further solidifies what I've been trying to talk about for over a year, and here it is. Legalization of stablecoins. The foreign stablecoins that were banned from last year, or maybe before last year, right? Last year, sorry, was Circle and Tether, but Circle got unbanned. And as we mentioned, these are the enablers that bring in volume. But I also talked about the local currencies. So look at what it says. The legalization of stablecoins making it possible to build local currencies. When it comes to crypto, it's the pairings that are your plugs, your connectors. And we know that basically through other things like USDC pairings with Stellar, with everything, Tether with everything, right? Bitcoin, Ethereum, everything. Says we must not forget about the procurement of funds from all over Japan, but also the local currency that circulates the local economy. A boom began around 99, and at one time there were nearly 300 copies issued. But that number since plummeted to about half. The reason is high operating costs. At the time, paper publications, which are the norm, it was a bit difficult to manage, and the fees paid to issuing companies were not cheap. Distribution volume did not increase. There was problems, so on and so forth. You will see an update here about this. It says the enforcement about Revised Payment Services Act in 2023, June 2023, became possible to issue stablecoins backed by legal currency. Issuance is limited to businesses with license, such as banks, trust companies, funds transfer companies. It seems likely that the day when local banks create digital community currencies will be born soon. Look at what that says. This is, I guess you could say, the juicy part. Local banks with the local stablecoins, the Japanese yen denominated stablecoins, the pairings are a big deal for Jasmy. Because again, back to this part, digital community currencies. whether it's JPY, whether it's the DD coin, and whether it's Jasmy. Hokuku Bank, what a name. Probably not pronouncing that right. Already announced plans to distribute a stablecoin in Ishikawa Prefecture that uses blockchain distributed ledger, whose value is linked to the Japanese yen. And if you were wondering, will it ever mention Jasmy? Well, of course it's going to. Why would Hara post it and show a face of a person that's part of the Jasmy management team? So look at this. And I know I went through a lot, and maybe some people are like, you could have just went to the bottom. I understand. Also, kind of, it's been a long, long day and night, so bear with me. But yes, it does reference Jasmy. And it's so cool to be able to finally share some things and have it recognized in local publications, obviously in Japan, about a lot of the things we've been talking about. Not just me, but Jesse, KIR Finance, Rob, many other people part of this Jasmy community, keeping you guys informed in regards to the nitty gritty. Okay, here's some that nitty gritty. So it says the Financial Services Agency, which is the FSA, right? We know that Genki Oda is part of that, has expressed reservations about stablecoins backed by bank deposit accounts. Unclear whether they will become a reality. For this reason, it is expected that methods creating digital money similar to conventional electronic money at low cost using a mechanism similar to that of crypto assets, my God, blockchain tech will become widespread. I just lost that page. That's not good. Let me jump back. Okay, cool. All right, I just opened up another one. Sorry about that. So will become widespread. When we talk about can Jasmy have things to, really work with the local government, really work with, doing big things. Will there be more that, mass adoption? Think about everything that they built in the crypto winter and those connections they had in place and all the people that said, oh, this is not a big deal. I just want to see the price action now. Again, Rome wasn't built in a day. What Jasmy's trying to do with Society 5.0 is not built in a day. We're not even at Society 5.0 yet. But you see here, Jasmy, I can't interpret this from the screenshot, but it states this: characteristics of Japanese yen stablecoin, says you got to have this whole thing of tamper resistance and traceability of blockchain. Things such as local specialties can be turned to digital assets. People can be used to prove the identity of producers, distributors, and money. I remember I did the whole thing talking about, a combination of Jasmy, audio, right? The tokenization of music, right? Not specifically Jasmy, but recognizing the Sony connection. And Sony had a patent many years ago that they got criticism about in regards to kicking things over in regards to royalties. I don't want to get into that so much, but this whole thing about proving the identity of producers and distributors and money, think about it. If you have a PDL, wouldn't the PDL help secure the privatization of who these people are and their intellectual property and so on and so forth? Well, yeah. So it says to prove the identity and money in the form of digital currency. Digital currency would be the likes of your Jasmy. Was born, hence the Bitcoin in Japan. Jasmy. What was previously thought to be a digital world, by using blockchain tech, is now possible to digitally prove even the physical resources of a real life. It was decided that it would be done. I would hope that this will be used to expand various new regional revitalization measures in the future. And again, who is this? It's Mr. Hidehiko Kakinuma. Now I get it. I didn't have his name memorized. I remember all the other guys. A lot of times it's kind of hard to keep up with all these Japanese names. No offense. But I have done a deep dive about him. And he is, like it says, in charge of product and service planning, business planning, marketing. As we know, this is one of the criticisms Jasmy gets, is not enough good of a job of marketing. But we did confirm this a while back that after joining Sumitomo Bank, currently Sumitomo Mitsui Banking Corp, right? He, as in Hidehiko Kakinuma, was in fact second to GR Home Net, which is currently NTT Plala, He started the ISP business. So he really understands like the concept of how the internet works and so on. Who better to lead something like Jasmy, in the charge of Web3 than somebody that has this type of background? Excuse me. Engaged in raising after moving to Sony, he was involved in establishment and business launch of Sony Bank. And again, for everybody saying that, Jasmy's not going to do hardly anything when it comes to finance democracy, you already have that plug. You already have that connect. Who is that? Well, it's two people, really. You know, Genki Oda, like we talked about before, but you know, somebody that's actually working with Jasmy who already worked with Sony. That's always going to exist. He was also in charge of marketing service for Sony Style. We've talked about this, right? But it's where he worked after that. And look what it says for a second. Worked as the product development manager, sales planning manager at Aon Bank, and then established Aon Alliance Life Insurance. I'm probably not pronouncing that right. Launched his business, became director, participating in Jasmy from February 2022. Literally, that's 2 years now with Jasmy. So that's not too bad to see stuff like that. Now, why get into this just because it's from Hara? No. But the reason why I'm bringing it to you guys is because you got to keep in mind there's so much that's worth mentioning. So, like, we know that data falsification is definitely a threat. The whole thing of local industries that try to prevent illegal leakage of whether it's sake or whatever the heck it is, they don't want their data to be leaked out, whether it's no matter what it's worth, whether it's healthcare data or like somebody stealing like sake receipts or something. But whatever the case be, the significance of all this is that blockchain traceability in combating data falsification is a real thing. And ensuring product authenticity is, like it said earlier in the article, multifaceted. So Jasmy itself will help create the whole thing of reducing counterfeiting. Counterfeiting exists everywhere. It's not just the United States, right? But in particularly Japan, Jasmy can allow with the PDL the whole mechanism of creating an immutable record of a product's journey from manufacturing, of course, to sale. Blockchain, through Jasmy's particular function, will make it much more harder to introduce counterfeit goods, of course, to market. That is a disruptor. And why is that such a big deal? Well, a lot of you guys hold VeChain, and one of the main key selling points is the concept that, like with VeChain, of being able to have a mechanism through the utility of VeChain, for instance, to go down to, and I'll use this example again, like like I guess you could say, go down to like a dock in New York, for instance, right? And there's two forms of black market. There's the black market that has stolen goods that have real products, like like your polo shirts and your polo parkas, or your real Air Jordans, right? That's a black market. And then there's the other black market where it's literally fake goods and they're not real. But to be able to have something that's going to scan to see if these are real, real products that came from real factories and so on, right? That's game changer stuff. But for Jasmy to already have in the PDL a mechanism that is going to be able to confirm if these are counterfeit goods that are going into market, doesn't that benefit the economy, right? It benefits both countries where it's coming in and out of. So that in itself is a big deal, because now we're talking about not just Jasmy when it comes to the concept of, finance democracy and data democracy, but also trade, which, let's face it, we always talk about XTC in that regard, or VeChain, or your Morpheus networks and so on. So to have Jasmy even access that part of the utility later, I think is a big deal. The tamper-proof nature, of course, of blockchain, and particularly Jasmy, ensures that any altercation to the data is detectable, deterring potential counterfeiters. Why? The whole concept of a personal data locker, be able to confirm what is immutable, what is future-proof. So I want you guys to keep in mind this, about four more things, right? This creates a level of enhanced transparency. And when the government understands that Jasmy is the first of its kind, or the Bitcoin is Japan and regulatory compliant and so on, that creates more of that trust. Like the title says, is Jasmy basically becoming platinum data? Think about that for a second. Platinum data. They boast the whole thing of um, you know, platinum data with harmony, or platinum data um, with trust. Okay. So if Bitcoin, as in BTC, is supposedly, you know, um, digital gold, then I think you should call Jasmy basically digital, platinum data. I mean, we talk about data being the new gold. In regards to that, it's literally, platinum data. And they boast that. That's even mentioned in the white paper. I'm not making that up. So I do feel as though that this is going to create that level of transparency, build trust, not just among institutions, but in regards to even retail consumers. And this whole thing that was mentioned in regards to this article, you got to keep in mind that, like, Jasmy, this mechanism with the PDL will help streamline supply chain, like we were just talking about, which can lead to efficiency gains, cost reductions. It's a win-win for everybody. But being able to automate a mechanism that will allow data exchange and verification of just that, the data, to eliminate manual processes, paperwork. I mean, my God, who wants to get rid of paperwork? I think everybody wants to get rid of paperwork. Like even snail mail. How many times you go pay a bill, it says, hey, would you like the option to go paperless? Yeah, I want the option to go paperless. I don't need to get a bunch of junk mail anymore in my mailbox. I know what I owe. You know, it does save time and resources. But back to the whole thing about Jasmy. When it comes to Super Wallet, we're going to see some things in regards to apps. We're going to see some new applications. So let's talk about this for a second. So Jasmy, the potential in regards to its particular blockchain and extending itself beyond, traditional industries, is highlighted in the example of sake. Um, in regards to the article, keep in mind that even that industry in itself, um, that's a big industry, right? Especially in Japan. I mean, a lot of Japanese people drink sake. So it will prevent illegal activities, and it will help ensure product integrity, and of course, not just in the sake industry, but various different other sectors. Now, in regards to a little bit more Jasmy moving forward, by leveraging their particular blockchain solution, this whole thing of traceability presents several opportunities for Jasmy, and especially us as in the token holders. I mean, we're all excited to see Jasmy up over 90%. You know, big things. I mean, our portfolios are blasting off, right? So let's talk about just, was it three things in conclusion before we wrap it up? I know I said I wanted to do a deep dive, but it's kind of becoming deep dive. It's this new business model. All right. Jasmy, believe it or not, yes, a new business model. Think about this for a second. They can explore developing new business models around data ownership, identity management, and other areas enabled by blockchain, of course, traceability. I think that should be the highlight of tonight's discussion, is traceability, immutability. Is this future proof? This in itself could involve creating platforms for data exchange. Well, of course, Jasmy is trying to create a decentralized data exchange, right? The opposite of what GAFA is, right? And with that said, they offer verification, certification services, partnering with industry players to develop what? Customizable, tailored solutions towards whatever need is necessary by securing data. That in itself is worth, oh my gosh, billions, maybe trillions. Actually, I should say maybe. Last video, what did we talk about? 5.5 trillion estimate to 12 point something trillion. And why is that important? Because it makes you realize that if Jasmy just has 1% of that IoT, how much should that be worth? Well, we know that. I did the calculation on it. $55 billion. All right. And that's just off of that one sector of IoT. What about other sectors of IoT? So this is big. And that doesn't even count some of these other things. So at the end of the day, by building trust and credibility through the government and all these local institutions and even ones abroad, by actively promoting and implementing blockchain tech and traceability solutions, again, back to the whole main subject, Jasmy itself can very well establish itself as the premier leader in trust and transparency within this entire digital ecosystem. And on top of that, it gets better. This reputation is going to attract new partners, customers, of course, fostering more of that long-term growth because they see what? This is working. This is the future. This is Web3. And these guys already got the partners. They already built and they survived through all the flood of crypto winter and so on. And look, this thing is taken off. So in conclusion, whether it's blockchain that has other types of forms of traceability, or if it's specifically Jasmy, because that's what we're talking about tonight, it does hold a significant potential by combating data falsification. No kidding. And also ensuring that product authenticity gets to go across everywhere for the most part, various different industries, right? Not just the whole thing of sake. But by capitalizing on its expertise and exploring new applications, Jasmy itself, again, your key takeaway, can position itself as the number one key player in this transformative technology, and especially to become number one for Japan. I thought this was crucial. I thought it was a big deal. Obviously, horror thinks it's a big deal, and that's why I wanted to share it with you guys. So with that said, let me know what you think in regards to this. Traceability, what's considered future proof. Is Jasmy going to provide that for Japan? I think the answer is yes. And if anything, you see how big that's starting to evolve, especially with what you've seen lately with price action. It's the industries that build in the background, especially during crypto winter. They lay down the framework. Everybody wants to see price action then. You have to first build on a solid foundation. They already done that.